You want on the end because they get that. He's sitting in the front section.
Like Southwest Airlines.
All right. It's nearly 9 o'clock. Let's call the Untitled Chapter Commissioners Court order this Tuesday, April 26, 2022. That's the full call roll.
Judge Gray.
Here.
Commissioner Weir.
Here.
Commissioner Eber.
Here.
Commissioner Leeson.
Here.
Commissioner Grant.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation. Mr. Jimmy Fairgrounds.
Father, we just thank you this day. This is the day that you have made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Thank you for the much needed rain. We'll also thank you for our commissioners and judge, the wisdom that you've given them, and they continue to rely on you for wisdom and insight as they lead Blanco County. Lord, thank you for our law enforcement officers here today. Thank you for them serving our community. Thank you for their safety and continued safety. God bless America. God bless Texas. And God bless Blanco County. In the mighty name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. Amen.
I will move to have that calendar. That's one I do not have. Public comments today, Terry Gasparis.
Good morning. So I'm here to address agenda item 12, which is proposal to increase the payment to election workers. So judges and clerks who work our elections are essential to supporting the right to vote. Many counties have difficulty finding enough judges and election clerks that have to close polling locations as a result. Fortunately, we haven't had that problem in Blanco County because we have a dedicated core group of judges and clerks. But we can't take that for granted. Many, as I'm sure most of us are aware, many of our workers are older. And over time, we're going to need to replace them as they set aside. I think $12 an hour is very reasonable. In fact, it could be more under the law. Think about this. Today, most fast food restaurants pay $12 an hour. And I think we could agree that supporting the right to vote is at least as important as a hamburger. I'll just add that these positions are workers, not volunteers. That's why we pay them. And we should pay them as much as we can. Blanco County Democrats stand behind all of our judges and election clerks. We thank you for their service to Congress. And I hope you do the right things.
Hang on a second. And, when you have to include when it was increased to $10 from the last raise?
I do not know, I do not.
I was thinking the same thing about the hamburger. Well, you said the long hospital, what's your interpretation?
I think people also get to get at least a better minimum wage. I think there's a cap.
I said,
Yeah,
so yeah. Do you have a number in mind?
well, I mean, I would say $15 an hour would be reasonable. I've seen signs, as you probably have, for local fast food advertising $15 an hour for their workers. So I think whatever we can afford, whatever the county can afford, is worth it.
Thank you. Turning back to item 4, item 5. Yes.
I make a motion we dispense with the reading of the minutes and accept them as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6. Where are the line items? We listed item 7. The outstanding bills.
I'll make a motion to pay the outstanding bills in the amount of $137,406.20.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Hickman, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 8, Mr. Lang, are you present? Is it? Are you making your way up here? When you get to the podium, you can confirm for me, you're still the president of the Oakland one?
Sure.
Chairman, the top guy.
Yes.
You have been for 3 years?
This is my second year in a row and one year previous, so I had 3 years total. Yes, sir. Well, good morning, Judge, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to do honor, offer the honor to one of our first responders. If I can have it. This is a certificate of appreciation presented to Chief Deputy Neil Leonard. I'll turn around and thank you. You have served Blanco County Sheriff's Office in the County of Blanco with great honor and devotion for the last 9 years and 6 months. Now, as the next chapter in your life begins, may great blessings follow you, and may you find joy in each new day. Thank you for your loyal and dedicated service and happy retirement. May you have fair winds and following seas. Presented by Blanco County Commissioners Court and the Hill Country 100 Club, April 26, 2022.
So, Neil, your last day is Friday. Knowing that the flag is going to present that to you, we had this flag flown over the Capitol with your honor, and certifies that flag being presented to you today by Blanco County was flown at the Capitol with the song of Fairgrounds, Texas on April 6, 2022. In appreciation of your dedication as Chief Deputy for Blanco County. And a couple of things. One, you're gonna, you may want to, I think you're gonna want to refollow it. We'll refollow it. If you get the star on he's fixing. So here you go. Good. And then, secondly, I would just like to say, of course, thank you, and I'm sure you should want to thank you. But it's kind of a unique position to be the chief deputy, in my opinion, that it's not an easy position. It's unique in the sense that you don't have your own association, just like the sheriff's association goes on and has their trainings and their events and whatever. The chief deputies have their own training and goes on their events. And it kind of makes sense because there's only at any given time, there's only 254 of y'all in the state. And so it's a big deal. And the other piece to it that's been my experience over a couple of careers is that the chief deputy, which I equate to the deputy executive director of an agency or any kind of organization you want to, that second guy has to be allowed to be with that guy. That's the one that the head guy gets to smile. Give everybody the passing bag, and the second man is the one that has to do that agency. So it's a pretty unique position that we service well out of the way, and Don needed somebody like you to come in as he was taking the reins and done a great job. We very much appreciate turning it over to the commissioners.
It's been a real pleasure working. Enjoy everything you've done a great job.
Great job. You've, before I became commissioner, I gave you all a call one night about some road repair. Anybody didn't come out, but you came out, so I appreciate it.
I'd like to say thank you for all your support. We've worked together many nights, days, events, all kinds of stuff. So thank you for your support, for the commissioner's support and for the community itself.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your support, and I enjoyed your feedback with me. I'll start another career.
Takes us to item 9, non-terminal, and non-terminal office and office of administration agency that we are non-terminal office. Basically, this just allows the law enforcement center folks to access all of their people things, TCIC and CIC.
Make a motion to authorize the county judge to accept and sign the non-terminal and office support administrative agency agreement.
Is there a second? Second. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Takes us to item 2. This is, we've already approved the replacing it's got a long number here. It's called the London Monster on the label. Anyway, we've already approved that, but we actually need you to approve the purchase of the part, which is the actual grinder, so that it can be installed.
I move we consider approval of the specs for the purchase of the 3005-0012 monster review from JWC.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 11. The cities of Johnson City and Blanco have, at some point in the past, have entered into interlocals with the county to determine who really takes care of the territorial jurisdiction, the ETJ regulations of things like the subdivisions. And we found the one for Johnson City, but the one for Blanco seems to be missing, so we want to redo it, do it, but it's not something new to us, it's something that has been in place for a while. Should speak up. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion authorizing for the county judge to sign an interlocal agreement with the city of Blanco regarding the extraterritorial jurisdiction.
Is there a second?
Second.
Greenberg, discussion.
Yeah, this is something that needs to be clarified, because there's some development going on that's in that area. It's got the current who's going to be overseer for this development of this area.
It would be good if Mr. McMahon was here, because I have some questions about the fire code in the ETJ. I think the city up here, I don't know about long ago, would prefer that we administer it. I'm not 100% sure. Language in this interlocal really is about subdivision regulation, but I'm not sure it should be the whole 9 yards. Maybe that's for another discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion carries, takes us to item 12. The election worker compensation issue.
Make a motion to authorize an increase in election worker compensation from $10 to $12 per hour pursuant to section 32.091 of the TEC.
Is there a second?
No, say.
Commissioner Peters, discussion. Well, I guess I'm gonna vote yes.
Judge, I'm sorry.
Is it the president?
This can.
Yes, I'm gonna vote yes, but I actually share Mr. Casper's view that really 15 probably would be appropriate. And I don't know, maybe I didn't ask Ms. Spees, I don't know when they ever got the raise, but I suspect it's been a lot of years. And this would be a 20% raise, that's true, but inflation's going at a crazy rate right now too, so I would do more than that. I understand. That's what the proposal is, that's what we'll vote on. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries. Item 13, interlocal with Travis County regarding a star flag. I think they call it star flag base west, and Mr. Oakley is here to make that presentation. That may or may not be going on right now in Travis County as well. It's definitely going on in Travis County sometime today before their commission.
Sorry. I apologize. This works just.
So,
Well, it's working on that. Let's just run one. All right. So good morning. All of you know me, but for the record, my name's Ben Oakley. I'm the chief of EMS for all of Blanco County. And I'm happy to be here today presenting to you before item 13, which is an interlocal agreement between Blanco County and Travis County. Here today also is Patrick Phillips. He is the Chief Deputy of Travis County Emergency Services. So he's present today to be able to ask me questions, or I'm sorry, to answer, hopefully he'll be answering questions, not asking. So I'll give you a quick background here to start. All right, so from a historical standpoint, in Texas, 72% of counties have a hospital, but we're one of 71 counties that does not have a hospital. That has not always been the case, as some of you are probably aware. We had a hospital many, many years ago in Johnson City that closed its doors about 38 years ago, because ultimately it became more efficient, among a lot of reasons, but ultimately became more efficient to transfer patients into Austin that were needing critical care services. Around that time, our trauma system was really developing, where we realized specialized patients need specialized care, and so that hospital closed. The problem that presents currently is, so within Blanco County, not having any hospital is quite a long ways away from critical care hospitals. So in my examples and in my PowerPoint today, I'm basing everything off of what we call Del Seaton Medical Center, which is the closest level 1 trauma center. And so it's the closest hospital that can meet the needs of everyone, regardless if it's critical trauma, cardiac, stroke, anything like that. So from the center of our county to Del Seaton, many of you may also know this is the new Brackenridge. So when they closed Brackenridge, they opened a new hospital across the street, just for point of reference. So from the center of our county to that facility is 44.6 miles. So the average transport time is 52 minutes. When we get to the furthest points of the county to that facility, it's about 70 miles or 85 minutes. So really long way. Our critically ill and injured patients have a disadvantage by being so far away from the hospital. And so how do we fix this, and how do we fix this? So the first thing is, our local EMS is kind of the lifeline as far as this problem is concerned. So 50 years in operation now, provided by ESD1, ESD2. We operate full-time mobile intensive care units or MICUs, and we do EMS in Blanco County a lot differently. So we have a lot more procedures, a lot more equipment, a lot more pharmaceuticals and things to manage patients for these long transports than a typical EMS system. But it doesn't fix the bigger problem for critically ill and injured patients that need services from a hospital quickly. So when someone is in a major car accident and their liver is just torn apart and they're massively bleeding, we can put Band-Aids on them, they can get blood, they can get this and that, but nothing's going to fix that problem until they get to a trauma surgeon in the OR. And so every minute matters at that point. The same goes for cardiac problems, strokes, etc., that are in need of these time-dependent interventions. And so we need a way to rapidly transport these patients to these comprehensive facilities. That's where helicopters have come in. The background on helicopters, they've been using them since World War II, even to move patients. And helicopters include a pilot, a flight nurse, and a flight paramedic, which transport these patients in an aircraft to the hospital. So as you can see at the bottom there, within our county, that transport time makes a huge difference. So that same metric we used on the previous slide, 52 minutes and 85 minutes, is reduced to 13 minutes and 18 minutes, so about 75% quicker. When you look at 85 minutes compared to 18 minutes, the answer is clear, that it's an efficient method of getting people there quickly. So that's why we partner with helicopter providers, and we partner with Starflight to move those patients quickly. But there's some disadvantages to how we do things currently and how we've done things for a long time. So the benefits of HIMS, helicopter EMS transport, is constrained ultimately by their response times. And so when we look at total response time and transport time, there's a lot of things that we have to factor in on a daily basis. There's the activation time, which is how long it takes for us to call them, or our dispatch center to call their dispatch center to notify the aircraft, walk out to the aircraft, start it up, get it airborne. All that's activation time. The flight time to the scene, how long they spend on scene, moving that patient from our ambulance into their ambulance, and then the time back to the hospital. So currently, the average activation and flight time, so when we call for an aircraft to the center of the county, which is how we quote most things, and we'll talk more about that in a second, is 26 minutes. And so what we have is, when we look at those ground transport times that we talked about previously, so 26 minutes plus 10 minutes on scene plus flight time back to Austin, there's a lot of patients where the benefit may only be like a minute or so, or not even that much of a benefit. And so they end up still having to go by ground, and these critical patients have an hour-long transport time. So we evaluate each incident individually, where it's at, calculate the times, see all that matters at the end of the day is who can get the patient to that hospital quickest and safest. So when those response times don't provide any benefit and we have to take them by ground, we have to take those patients by ground. And like I said, they have that response time, or that long transport time. So the newer model is that over the years, most helicopter-based air medical programs have been transitioning from a centralized type of hub model, where helicopters are based in big cities and they fly out to the outlying counties to pick up people and bring them back, to a newer model where they're starting to place aircraft in more rural communities where they're needed most. So we've cut out that whole response time. It's not a secret that helicopters are most valuable to rural counties that need to move patients into the bigger urban areas quicker. And so that model kind of is a shifting of the models of helicopters really around the country. And so helicopter-based EMS is an essential safety net for patients in rural areas. And so by moving aircraft closer to patients, we can significantly reduce morbidity and mortality. So the solution, that was a long introduction, I'm sorry. But I'm gonna make sure you get the whole story. So the solution is what this agenda item is about. It's a proposed project for collaboration between Blanco County and Travis County to construct a station/base in northern Blanco County, which would serve as a helicopter fixed base of operations as well as an ambulance station. And the proposed project would house both air assets and ground assets. So a little bit about Travis County Starflights. They're a multi-mission public safety program serving Travis County and the 17 counties surrounding Travis County. What's different about Starflight is that they don't just do air medical missions, or what we would call EMS missions. So they do 911 scene response. They do critical care and facility transport like most. But what's unique is they also do search and rescue. They do hoist operations. They do aerial firefighting. They provide support for law enforcement and also do specialty team transports. So it's the third oldest flight program in the state of Texas, started in '85, and it's the only CAMES, which is an accrediting agency that accredits air medical transport providers. It's the only CAMES accredited public safety flight program in the U.S. So only one that's accredited that does these specialty type of missions, not just medical.
So, sorry.
Yes.
So, instead of plain English, they're the only helicopter we know around here in the EMS world that fights fire.
Correct. Of medical helicopters, yes. I mean, so for Texas A&M Forest Service has some aircraft, but they don't have paramedics and nurses in them. So site selection, a question you may be asking is why we're proposing it in this location. And Round Mountain was actually mutually selected. It's beneficial to both parties, both Blanco County and Travis County. So the pros of this is there's already sufficient publicly owned land available. So this is where the Round Mountain Fire Station is, and that tract is currently owned by ESD 1. The location is close to western Travis County. It's close to common rescue locations. So Lake Travis, Cardinals Falls State Park, and Enchanted Rock are all three very common locations requiring Starflight to send aircraft to hoist, rescuers down and pick up injured people. And like I mentioned, it is close to a lot of western Travis County, closer than their current location. So it's a mutually beneficial location. As far as within Blanco County, where to place such a project really is irrelevant because of aircraft speeds. The physical location within the county is not significant because all of Blanco County would be accessible and with average flight time of under 10 minutes. And you'll see how quick those are here in just a moment. So the scope of the project that's being discussed today is outlined by the interlocal agreement. It's for a helipad that's in compliance with all FAA regulations to land the type of aircraft operated by Starflight in single pilot instrument flight rule conditions. Fuel for 10,000 gallons, a hangar that's capable of storing both the aircraft and an ambulance, and capable of housing 6 personnel. So 3 of those would be air-based, 2 would be ground-based, and 1 would be a flex type of room, depending on if either having an extra person, so people in training, etc. The station is capable of housing 6 personnel. It includes an operations office for aviation and ground operations, what we call crew quarters, which is private bedrooms, day room, bathroom, showers, kitchen, medical supply rooms, tool rooms, decontamination rooms. So based on all of the specifications outlined in this agreement, there's some rough figures rolling around of about 8,900 square feet, of which, I'm sorry, that last bullet point should say conditions, not conditions, but the actual station indoor conditioned space, about 4,500, and the rest is, essentially apparatus area. So the initial staffing plan concepts, both of which are subject to approval of the respective management authorities, is the best way I can work this. So ultimately, Starflight management and ESD commissioners have to, dictate what's best to serve our communities, our respective communities. Starflight's initial concept for this is a 12-hour peak load aircraft, which includes 30 personnel, occasional overnight shifts, and expanded coverage based on needs identified in the future and resource budget availability. On the EMS side, what we would be proposing is to start it off. So that area is an area that ESD has been watching very closely. It's not to a point yet where we can justify a full-time ambulance there 24 hours a day. So the initial staffing plan that I will be proposing to ESD is a single paramedic response unit or a squad, which will allow us to put a paramedic in that community able to rapidly respond and stabilize patients until the transport unit can arrive, and ensures paramedics are available and all of our ambulances are gone out of the county. And then that sets the groundwork for, as called volume dictates, transitioning that to a 24-hour ambulance. So the benefits of Blanco County. On the map here, the blue circle is the current 15-minute flight time coverage from the Starflight hangar in Travis County. And so with that blue circle, you can see that roughly about 50% of our county falls within that, and then the other half does not. The red circle is from the proposed Blanco County hangar. All of Blanco County is obviously within that 15-minute radius, as well as about 70% of Travis County and nearly all of Burnett, Lano, and Kendall and Gillespie, and Hayes. So you can see here on the chart within our county estimated response times. Now these are, just to be transparent, these are flight times. So actual time flying in the air. So currently from when like the aircraft lifts off to Blanco is 15 minutes. From this Blanco County hangar it would be 6. Johnson City is currently 14 and it would be 4. Round Mountain is currently 13 and it would be 0 because it will already be there. And Burnett Falls is 11.5 minutes currently and it would drop down to 2 minutes. So and nearly 80% reduction in flight times. The benefits to Travis County, it puts them closer to areas that are in need of their services, which shortens their flight time required to reach these patients. In addition, the western area, not only Blanco County, but counties around us are very busy during fire season because it's a very high-risk fire area. So having an aerial firefighting resource closer to these areas makes good sense, obviously. The quicker we can get an aerial firefighting aircraft to a fire in the initial stages of an incident can drastically change the outcome of the incident. And it makes them closer to places where they're currently needed most. So the benefits extend far beyond our county. So Travis County's Starflight serve more than just our county and Travis County. Like I mentioned before, they serve the surrounding 17 counties of Central Texas. And this proposed project would bring them closer to several of our neighbors, bringing the same benefits to them. So Burnett, Lano, Satava, Passes, Gillespie, Hayes, and Comal. So this interlocal that's being proposed today has 2 important contingencies or requirements. One is that financing is obtained on acceptable terms no later than the end of this year, and obtain title to the land at the proposed site from ESG by the end of the year. So if both of those requirements are not met by the end of the year, the non-LA will be terminated as of January 1. So to conclude, one concept we use in our industry frequently when we evaluate change in projects is what's called the triple aim. It comes from the Institute of Healthcare Improvement, and it's what we utilize to evaluate projects for their performance. So the triple aim looks to ensure that a project or an initiative or a way we do something has 3 things. That it improves the patient's experience of care, and improves the health of our populations, and it ultimately reduces costs. So this project improves population health by reducing morbidity and mortality. It reduces this disparity that rural patients have, allowing rural patients to access comprehensive health care in the same amount of time as the urban patient could, which I think is really important. We're changing that transport time from 50, 80 minutes to 15 minutes, the time it would take someone who lives in Travis County to get to the hospital. It improves the experience of care. Obviously, patients who are hurting, sick, not feeling well, and excruciating amount of pain, the quicker we get them to the hospital is going to make them feel better. And it's a cost-effective solution compared to other solutions, and more importantly, provides access to a governmental-based public care medical provider, which ultimately is providing service to patients at a fraction of the cost of the private industry. So it reduces consumer costs as well. Are there any questions?
I expect there'll be a lot of questions.
You too.
Those two concentric circles that those aren't necessarily service area. I mean, in fact, this could expand. This could be able to interfere, not Mason, another resource hospital. Yes, no?
Yes, I don't know, is Mason currently in the primary service? I don't remember Mason.
It is not, Judge Commissioners Patrick Phillips. It is not our primary, it'd be our secondary. We don't have a restriction as to where we can go. Typically, because of FAA regulations, we have areas that are automatic to go without approval from a flight authority. If Mason County started popping up regularly as a place to go, we would add that to the list of approvals. We have to have some boundary according to the FAA, and so we chose it based off of fuel load, basically where we could go and come back regularly and where we have regularly gone.
So Blackwood County Commissioner agreed to, spend money and build this house for them. We know, we have an idea that's gonna cost, what that's gonna cost. But of the two entities putting assets in Brown Mountain, would you say that Travis County is putting more expensive assets there?
Absolutely. So I mean, looking at just aircraft costs, so the aircraft that they operate is nearly a $12 million aircraft. So it's a tremendous asset that they're bringing. And that's excluding the human capital loss that they're bringing in pilots, critical care nurses, and critical care paramedics into our community.
And I think just for everyone's benefit, that this isn't going very wrong.
No, I would not call it an ordinary helicopter. It's if you've not seen it, it's rather impressive. So, I mean, an ordinary helicopter, what I would perceive in the medical industry is that ordinary helicopters, there's a lot of bells and gyrocopters. It's just, pilot, patient's feet kind of hanging nearly in the pilot's lap. And two seats in a very, very small space. Probably about this much space for the actual working room. This is a significantly larger aircraft. In the cabinets, in addition to the stretcher, it's got 4 seats. It's got hoists, it has fire hydrant equipment, it has an impressive amount of capabilities. And I'm underselling that
Probably. And so to go, just to go over it again, your indications, because so many times I get the north and south issues. But if you have a critical patient in Blanco and you want to start one, if you pull this and start lights here, you could literally get start light from the drive out house to the landing pad at Blanco High School in 6 minutes.
6 minutes flight time, yes. But it's also conceivable to say that, given the size of our county, one thing I didn't mention in my PowerPoint is as a public safety provider, Starflight technically could respond to a call and land on the scene by themselves. So if there was a call very far out that has a prolonged response time or dispatch that identified that it's very critical, they need someone there, it's possible that the aircraft can keep the grounding once they're. That's happened actually with the current base location due to flooding conditions and whatnot in the past, where we had to have them first respond. And they will pull up in my yard and walk into the house and act like they just arrived in the wrong ambulance.
Is that list of things, attributes of the proposed facility, is that really much different than what you have in Blanco at the new facility that the institute?
It's nearly identical as far as scope and capabilities.
Housing people.
Correct. I mean, that project in Blanco, used stacks from a lot of other stations is pretty much a standard for building stations at this point in time. The only thing different about this is obviously what we would call the apparatus bay is taller and bigger for the helicopter, and that there's a operations office, for flight planning, weather checking, things of that nature. That's the only two differences.
The price of concrete is astronomical. And construction costs have soared in the last year. We're thinking I think we even had a guesstimate from a professional that at the outer limits, it could be as much as 2.4 million, but we're thinking it's closer to the 1.8 or 9 million. Is that about right?
1.8, I think the range was 200 to 270 square foot. 270 definitely. 200. Compared to the project is probably a fair estimate. I know that the ESD2 station was about 4 years ago, and it was 162 square foot. So if you inflate that, today's inflation makes it be 200. Not outside reality.
If I lived in Westlake or Woods or in that area, which pretty dense out. It's in Travis County, it's outside of Boston, but it's really not appropriate for it's not likely that a startup like me is going to come to there, is it?
So they respond within Travis County. I think that, correct me, Patrick, if I'm wrong, the responses in Travis County are a little different than ours.
Let me give you a worse example. My daughter on 24th Street on West Campus needed emergency medical. It's not like she's smart line,
No, the majority is ground transport.
And as Austin goes in there and gets her stoplights, service area kind of expands or extends, and Waco County is one of their prime service areas, isn't it?
Yes, we are very high utilizer.
And just for, I think all commissioners know this, but, those old live tales and heard horror stories of the past, but with the law being what it is today, it has been for a while. If I have to get starlighted out of Blanco County, the way the law is right now, starlight goes against my insurance, but right against me.
Correct. So, sorry. Yes, so there was a bill passed in the last legislation that allowed them to change their policies to where they can bill insurance and then not balance billing issues.
Which sometimes can be a lot.
Yes.
You directed flight operations for the fire down on 1623 about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
And that's like a piece of the incident command system. You were a subdivision.
Correct.
And Commissioner Eastman's out there chasing down drones because we don't want to put a $12 or $18 million helicopter at risk of a drone strike.
Yes.
And if Matt McMahon were here today, he would tell us that he was standing on front porch of that house. One of the houses down there, I think it was 7 or 11 or something like that. If this helicopter hadn't been there, they probably would have been able to save that house.
Yes, that's correct. It was perfectly timed. I mean, they were able to access areas that weren't accessible by fire trucks. And they were able to make a critical stop that changed out from that fire for sure. Which is common in most of the situations we use them in.
Speaking of common, the Fairgrounds Falls State Park is not something I think about a lot, but they do a fair amount of rescue out there, or recovery anyway.
Yeah, so they're automatically dispatched to any rescue in the park. So we send EMS, fire, and Starflight automatically to get all of the resources going. And it's very common. We see a lot of people with injuries down in the actual falls that are required to be hoisted out.
And you said 2 minutes.
Yeah, they definitely would be thinking this. And probably will work.
How many acres are going to be required for it out of the ESC?
I think that will ultimately come down to design, because the idea would be not to utilize any more of the track than needed. I played around with some drawings, and it's probably going to come out to around 2 acres, maybe a little less than that, but based off the facility size, requirements, approach paths, and all that, it's probably come out to be about 2 acres.
They have 5.
It's 10
acres. So they've got plenty of expansion.
Yes, there's tons. I guess I shouldn't say tons. If you had a 1,400 acre property, that 10 is not a lot.
Who dispatches this helicopter to y'all, or is it 911?
It goes through the 911 system, so the dispatch agency responsible for Starflight is Austin, Travis County, and us. So our dispatch calls Travis County, and they process it.
So it's still gonna be the same, we're gonna call Austin County County, and then they're gonna dispatch the helicopter and sit and run up.
Correct. This could pave the way to make some dispatch processes more efficient with the technologies that we use, but yes, they will still be the dispatch agency responsible for them, because that gets into some FAA requirements of flight monitoring. You want one single point of dispatch center responsible for all their aircraft.
About how long have you been working on this?
That's a difficult question. Actively?
Yeah.
Actively, since the middle of 2021, I think is when the conversations first came up with Starflight.
And ultimately we drove Miss Ashby into it. And Travis County drove their lawyers into it.
Ms. Ashby has been a humongous resource on this.
And in fact, you and she and others even visited these Starflight hangars and facilities to better understand how to put this interlocal agreement together. So a lot of study has been put into this on our side to get the agreement in final shape.
Yes, I believe it's version 37. Okay, that may be understatement. Yes, we did have a meeting with stakeholders from both Blank County and Travis County, to allow everybody to sit down at the table together, see their facilities, see what's important to them, what works, what doesn't work, and allow our attorneys and their attorneys to all meet as well, and work with legal and stuff.
Can you go back over the time that people will be there, the staffing?
The
Proposed staffing.
The proposed staffing in the agreement is for daytime, well, I shouldn't say daytime, 12-hour aircraft. So currently Starflight has one 24-hour aircraft and one 12-hour aircraft. aircraft that I believe is 9 to 9.
Or 9 to 9.
9 AM to 9 PM. And so the initial staffing plan proposed is that 9 AM to 9 PM aircraft. Ultimately, what was important in this contract is not to get very particular on dictating specific times or anything like that, because we need to give management the opportunity to place their resources as needed, and if things happen with mechanical and whatnot, they didn't want to have anything binding saying, we have to be here between this hour and this hour.
Even though it's Starflight, do you know if Starflight has any aspirations to expand that 12-hour?
Yes, I know that, is that appropriate to say?
Judge Commissioners, yeah, so every year, for the past 3 budget years, including FY '23, but kind of we're in a budget process, we ask for additional 12 hours of flight time in our budget. So far, the volume doesn't really support that. What our planning budget also be looking for is would there be offsetting revenue for that? And we don't like to talk a lot about revenue because we are a public service, but we know we're all sensitive to that. And so if the volume increased, there would be an associated increase in revenue, it would certainly make that request more favorable to PDO to recommend our commissioners.
Do you personally have an expectation? How does it go?
Personally, for Patrick Phillips, I would love to see Starflight be out here 24 hours a day. I think we provide an excellent service. I think that in conjunction with y'all's support, Lincoln County EMS, and this amazing system that you guys have here. I hope you know that, right? But it is a gem, and I think it'd be a great partnership. We already have a great partnership, and so I would absolutely. I mean, that's been a personal goal of mine. And for y'all that don't know, I worked for Starflight for 13 years. I was a flight paramedic there, and then in management. And there's diversification of where we're at. This has been a goal of mine several years.
On this recent fire event, who picked up the tab for that expense?
For the aircraft? So Starflight does not charge for any public safety missions. So whether that's firefighting, law enforcement, search and rescue, there's no cost. They absorb that into their budget as a service to the public. And even I would go so far like hoist rescues. There have been some times where they've come out, hoisted someone out of Burnhouse Falls. The patient really didn't want to be transported to the hospital in a helicopter. They've landed, pulled the patient out, put it in one of our ambulances. Still, no bill to the patient for a public safety mission.
I do want to be clear though, if we do transport that patient as a patient, then we will bill for that portion of the flight. It falls under the same rules been talked about, where we're gonna bill insurance and there's no balance bill from that.
But that's how you keep flying, that's how you justify your existence.
Yes, sir, Judge, that's, we can't bill for the rescue portion of it, we can't bill for the firefighting, we cannot bill for the law enforcement support based off of the regulations we fly under from part of the FAA. And so part of the way we offset the cost of the program is through, the primary mission is EMS, but that's how we offset that cost.
Curiosity on search and rescue. I once was in a helicopter with Commissioner Leisman, and it had infrared capability. Does your helicopter have?
We don't have what we consider a clear ball or installed system, and we have handheld infrared, which works pretty good. It's kind of poor man's infrared. We made a trade-off when we designed the aircraft not to do that because it's a small portion of kind of what we do, and it was going to increase the overall weight of the aircraft and significantly increase the cost. And so actually our crews have gone out and found a really good handheld solution at a fraction of the cost. And I always tell people we're really good at finding people that want to be found. So, the law enforcement side, people that don't want to be found, you know,
Especially a 110-degree day.
yeah, it's a lot harder. I mean, that unit has its limitations. It's not crouching in the cool, it's not all of the things that you might see in a dedicated law enforcement helicopter. But for the search and rescue portion of the mission, it does pretty good.
Let me ask you this, we talked about the cost of it. So what's the county's responsibility as far as to keep the same maintained?
Oh, it's all,
It's all, it's,
helicopter?
Yeah.
Facility.
I'm asking about anything the county has to do to keep it running. The facility itself, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's our facility, I mean, we'll insure it.
I mean, we have paid employees to be in there, that's all. Gotcha.
Yeah, the staffing, all of that, there's no responsibility of the county. That'll be ESD and Starflight. It'll just be the infrastructure upkeep.
I'm not sure this has been 100% lined out, but I believe that the ESD is even going to pick up the meter, the electric meter. So, you know, ours is the front load, but we don't rely on.
But maintenance.
A little different, so.
If the air conditioner goes up, just use our.
So we basically return additional waste out. Compared to what's sitting in it, it sounds like pretty good. Compared to even concrete, so. Adding on stuff.
Yeah.
There's
Well, operator capital, our car budget is pretty high, so, our operating budget, is, and this is with personnel costs, you know, probably $5 to $6 million a year. But one of the things that, you know, about helicopter, it's just 37 years of building infrastructure. You know, a lot of these costs are paid for over time and stuff like that. You know, so the initial cost is high, the ongoing cost is high, and the current with a lot of recurring costs. So,
So you don't have to pay $5 to $6 million a year.
Yeah, it's
Great news.
just sounds
I can't remember when you said this to me, but, to show the commissioners the level of commitment, because it's a big commitment on like the county. Did I remember you saying to the residents that you all were even, interested in buying another fuel, you have a fuel trailer at your location in Austin, but buying another fuel trailer to be located out here at the facility, so that it would get to the helicopter faster.
yeah, so there's been talk of that. It's not in our FY23 budget, primarily because of the build time. But we do have a field trailer. There's actually some regional asset on Novak. We're the only helicopter, so it was purchased by a capital grant many years ago. And so we operated, if you wouldn't maintain it.
And there's another one.
Maybe. So it does help though, that, you know, there's going to be 10,000 gallons of fuel right there. And the fuel cost will try to try to find it. But in Blanco County, and in some ways it faster just to go back there and fuel and come back because it's fairly well located, just the things.
I was looking on the Google Earth, and it looks to me like the closest facility would be something closer to either Ruby Springs than your current facility.
It's well located. I can't argue that. That's for sure. It's good. A lot of that area, that's a big place to look, so the lake kind of gets in the way. And it tries kind of, so it goes really across it. It is very well located.
Questions? I'll make a motion.
It is your precinct.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the county judge to sign an interlocal agreement with Travis County for Starflight base pending county attorney approval.
Second.
Mr. Baker seconds. Discussion. You will need to make sure you're aware of the next two items on this agenda that are tied to this item, because I believe Steve Perry, hopefully he's still on, and has been listening, and we would want to engage him to go out with financing options. And then Mr. Shelby, who is here, in my mind, has spent his own time, he's not on clock yet. And actually, the company is actually historically, to the Starflight facility, so. Yeah, and he's also inspected your PST2 facility, right?
Yes.
So he's familiar with both and has an idea of what this is going to cost us, and could maybe say more about that. And he'll need to get on that. We decide to do that, because Mr. Kirby's going to need to know a number. So, would you be one of those two items that kind of run with this item, if you vote to approve it? And with that, there's any further discussion?
I would just like to add that you keep talking about the time that Ben spent on this and that I spent on this. You've also been very instrumental in pushing this forward. So a lot of time you were at the facility, you went on a visit. Patrick, he's been a huge help. He's really been instrumental in pushing this forward for us. And Scott, he put in his own time, he's not on the clock. He's helped us kind of understand some of the requirements that we're going to have so we can craft the agreement and account for all the regulations that are going to come into play, the financing, the facility, and what we might need. So it's really been a group effort, and everybody's spent a lot of time with this. I think it's very beneficial to the county, all the things that Starflight can do, firefighters, to rescues, to helping law enforcement. So I wasn't as excited when I first started this project, and as I got into it and saw all the benefits to the county, and I really got excited about it. So that's all I have to say.
Well, and right the point that I was on, want to make sure is clear. It is a very complicated process, and we Ben played with shakes and ESDs, then that work loose on the land. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the end, Federal Aviation Administration is going to tell us which direction the workspace, which.
It will certainly inform them, yeah. So, just like most things federal, they don't really tell you, they'll tell you when you're wrong. But yes, it'll certainly inform all those decisions.
Anything else under discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you, Judge. Commissioners.
Mr. Perry, are you on the?
He is on this.
Is it with us?
Great.
How do we know?
I'm asking you that I read that. I don't know if he's wrong way.
Commissioner, if you would unplug the camera that's plugged in and plug in the one that's not plugged in, you can
It's like that phone system downstairs.
He wouldn't do anything.
Here it is.
you.
So I see his name, does that mean he's on?
He's been on all, yes, and he is unmuted now, so.
Steve, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning. Were you able to view much of or hear much of the presentation on the previous and the project?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
I was asking if you were able to hear and or view any of the previous items, presentation and the project for the Starlight Base.
Yes, sir. I heard the entire presentation.
We need to get you a stronger number, but it's looking in the neighborhood of 1.8 to 2.4 million. And if the commissioners approve doing so, are you open to going out and looking for some financing for us?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Seems to me the two kind of logical options here are either the longest term tax note at 7 years, or what would actually be a benefit in my mind would be a certificate of obligation for about 15 years. And am I mistaken, or has our bond council sort of preliminarily said that this is the kind of project that fits a certificate of obligation?
You're correct, Judge. This is the sort of project that fits within the recent HB 1869 regulations for adopting or for issuing certificates of obligation. And I think your point about your two primary options being tax notes or certificates of obligation are the two primary options that would work. Your debt all matures within the next 7 years, which is great, but I think you do have the ability, and it would be beneficial to stretch that out a little bit. In 15 years, I think would be prudent. That allows you to put some of the principal after your current principal matures, and thereby reducing the tax rate impact to your taxpayers. If you're like the rest of the counties, and I suspect you are across the state, I think your tax base is growing significantly. And so let's say that we were able to do something between now and the end of your current fiscal year. Conceivably, we could issue that amount and even more and have little or no tax rate impact next year. Of course, tax appraisals are more than likely going up, but in terms of the tax rate, I think we could manage that to have little or no impact the next couple of years.
On this agenda item, I also added a piece about Fairgrounds Construction, because there's a facility that we're interested in that's going to cost more than we have. But I don't think we're anticipating any kind of construction until after August. So I'm thinking that we might want to, that might be, if Commissioner Leesman, who's kind of spearheaded this thing, if we want to talk about that, it may be for a later time to do a tax note or another piece of indebtedness on that. I guess what I'm trying to ask you is it better to try to wrap everything in one, or do you care if it's two separate ones spaced out a little bit?
It doesn't matter if it's issued separately. It's slightly more efficiently if you can bundle the two things together. But if you don't have a really strong sense for what the cost is going to be, especially if it's something that's that far out, then maybe it makes sense to break it up. Especially given what's happened with material and construction costs, that it may make sense to really have a much stronger idea before you try to bundle the two things together. Because then, what could happen is, you issue some amount now and then have to come back and do some sort of a small cleanup or completion debt, which is not efficient. So maybe it makes sense to have those separate.
The efficiencies are just the fees and such as that, right?
Those, yeah, right. That's really the difference. You just have separate transaction cost every time you go and issue again.
You want to leave it for another day, or?
I think that we are far enough along on the cost analysis of the other project that we could be, the timing could coincide with this project as well.
So bundle the two?
I think they'll bundle the two together, save on fees.
Yeah, from a timing perspective, one thing that, as we've issued tax notes that we have not had to do for certificates, if you decide to go with certificates, the first step would be to authorize publication of the notice that you're going to issue certificates, and then you have to publish that notice, which has to be 45 days prior to the sale and adoption of the certificates. So the lead time is definitely longer. You're talking at least roughly a month and a half to 2 months before you could adopt those. So that does give you enough time to let things develop a little bit more.
So are the steps, do I have the steps right that we would engage you and then you would help us to, if we decide to go to bundle it like that, to go ahead and you would help us to put that notice together?
Yes, that would be my job is to coordinate all the aspects of the financing. So, like we've done in the past, what we would do with something that's 15 years more than likely is, put together an offering document and, do what we call a public offering, because over 15 years, a lot of times that can be more efficient. There's a deeper investor base for that period of time. But yes, I would put together all the aspects of that, and then up until the time that we're ready to issue, we can make slight modifications on the project size and those kinds of things. But yes, I just need some sort of indication that you're ready to go, and then the next formal step would be to have the Commissioners Court adopt the authorization or authorize the publication of the notice for the certificates, and that could be at your next meeting or whenever you decide, and that starts the clock on the 45-day period.
Interested in making a motion to engage, Mr. Perry?
I'll make a motion to engage Steve Perry, PA Davidson Company for possible financing, Starflight Base and Fairgrounds Construction.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Brammer, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Steve, can you stay with us for just a minute?
Yes, sir.
Item 15 involves possible engaging Mr. Shellface, and can you come up for that?
Yes, sir.
So we've heard this conversation. I'm going to go backwards. Do you think we can do the Fairgrounds project? The last number I heard, being maybe around between 700,000 and 800,000.
Yes.
Does that seem likely?
Yes, sir.
And we probably understand that one better than we do the base, because there's so much plumbing and so much mechanical.
Exactly. We definitely have a better handle on that one than the areas. Yes.
So if it were, let's say, 800,000 plus, if the base were the worst case scenario, say about 2.4, that'd be, we'd be looking at 3.2 million.
Yes, correct.
But are you going to be able to give us a better number than that sometime soon?
Yes, definitely, yeah. Without really having the design nailed down and underpinned, and Patrick done a great job of outlining a scope of work and a listing of program spaces. But until you have something kind of set as far as the size goes, we're not going to really have a good firm handle on costs. So right now you have so many square feet, and right now construction is $250, $300 a square foot, depending on what you're building. So, this one's going to be a lot more efficient because you look at trying to match what it has in Blanco as far as an efficient metal building.
Speaking of which, can you remind the commissioners what experience you have for this kind of structure, for stuff like this?
So my background, I did a lot of textile aviation back 20, 30 years ago. I have done the design of the Amarillo International Airport, Midland International Airport, Lubbock Airport, and just recently we worked with Air Evac and Air Methods for the Kerrville Airport, where Air Methods is our newest client. And we redid some facilities for them as well. I've done 6 helipad projects over 25 years. I think the biggest hurdle in this project is dealing with the FAA. So the building is quite easy. Fuel systems are always a little bit tricky, but it's more than just containment. It is a very expensive item to have out there. Looking at what Jet A costs, up to $9 a gallon now. So it's an expensive asset, along with the $12 million helicopter. But we just had put out some bid for T hangars in Kerrville. So I've done some fairly large hangars in the past and just renovated a quite large hangar, about 60,000 square feet at Kerrville Airport. It used to be owned by L.D. Brinkman. To repair it and replace all the doors on it. So the facility itself is fairly easy. It's regulations. FAA is going to be a part of this stuff. I think we can do a very efficient design. Ben has done a great job of laying out the spaces and consolidating joint spaces for one. I think it'll go for a lot less than a high end of 2.4. I'd love to see it about 1.6.
And when do you think you'll be able to, if you get hired today, when do you think you'll be able to reset?
I know that the agreement is going to have representatives from Travis County and Starflight as a part of the design team. Hopefully, that's something that can start within the next 4 to 6 weeks. My guess is it'll probably take about probably 4.5 months to get it completely done and ready for bidding. So we're looking at May, so hopefully September.
Before you'll have a number, because that's good enough.
I would think we would have a number within the first, if we could start working on a design, let's say, and have something that's agreeable to both sides in 8 to 10 weeks.
Okay.
We'll have a number then.
Okay. One more thing, Mr. O'Bannon is here, he's the president of the ESD board. And I have been saying all along that if this comes to pass, that me personally, I would like it that it complements what they've already just built out there, that brand new facility.
Yes.
And you've been aware of that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And agree with that?
Absolutely. Been by there in the new facility in Blanco, and I think can marry the look and be very efficient. I think we're deciding which of the area of the property for the location of the building and just looking at what the future might hold for use of the property out there, as well as what the FAA directs for being able to use the site for cleaning.
Any questions for Mr. Shoulders? Anybody interested in engaging?
The motion to engage Scott State-based SLS partnership for concept design drawing for Starflight Base and consult on project management.
Is there a second? Discussion. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's really exciting.
Item 16, after consultation with the council, we understand that There's not a lot we can do today or currently about the census tracts and how the precincts or how the voting precincts have been drawn and commissioner precincts have been drawn. Even though, I don't know if we're satisfied with how it worked out for precincts 1 and 2 on the western side, but it is what it is. But we do have the ability to use the court of council to at least clarify, under the current drawings, that some roads that didn't belong to Commissioner Weir Precinct 1 could continue to belong to Commissioner Weir Precinct 1. And be under his responsibility. So, actually, this is right.
All right. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and continue maintaining these 3 roads in my majority of our budget. We've worked on them for the last 3 or 4 years. I've got a direction where I'd like to so I'd like to make a motion to clarify that Kinley, European, Conwood Road to remain precinct 1, county roads.
Is there a second?
I'll second. And I did the second talking.
I don't agree with that second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 17. The representative of absence committee, Item 18.
Make those to adjourn.
Is there a second? Mr. Ritter, please say aye.
Aye.